Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Dr. Larry Sabato, the founder and director of the University of Virginia Center for Politics. Dr. Sabato, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Brittany. Nice to be with you.
It's nice to have you here, especially because we are in the final stretch until Election Day, less than 4 weeks away, and we have some new and exciting numbers out of the swing state polls. This morning, we are seeing Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia going to Trump +1, according to Emerson College polling. Michigan and Wisconsin are a tie. Arizona, Trump is up by 2, and Nevada, Harris is up by 1. So can you read the tea leaves for us here a little bit, because they are in a dead heat? What sticks out to you?
Well, I want to caution people. I've been at this a long time, and you never, ever draw conclusions from one poll or even today from polling averages. They're often wrong. Now, remember, in our highly competitive era, being wrong can mean being off by just a point or two within the margin of error. All the polls you've just cited are not definitive enough to tell us much of anything. All due respect to the pollsters. So I don't think that we should cite just one. There have been, we get them sent to us every single day. Just in the last 24 hours, I've probably seen 30, 35 polls of presidential race in the key swing states, the 7 swing states, plus the significant Senate races. And I'm not going to say they're all over the lot, because they're all close to one another in conventional terms, but they all have different winners in different states. I can cite you several polls that would contradict each state you've just given me, both for Trump and for Harris. So we're in the post-polling era. We really are. Polls are not what they used to be, partly because people aren't interested in participating to the degree they once were, partly because it's more difficult to reach people, or some people in particular, and also because a lot of Americans understand just how divisive our politics is today, and they prefer not to express themselves. They would rather tell you they're undecided than tell you who they're for. And I understand that. I think it's a sensible decision. Unfortunately, it makes it more difficult for us to project anything.
That's a really interesting point, and one worth noting, because obviously Donald Trump overperformed the polls both in 2016 and 2020. As we know, in 2022, in the midterms, the red wave failed to materialize. Do you foresee that happening again in 2024, where he overperforms?
I wouldn't be surprised to see the results not conform to the polls. But as we've learned, they cannot conform in the Republican direction. They cannot conform in the Democratic direction. So once again, there's no firm conclusion to reach. Now, I will say this, having discussed this with many pollsters over the last 8 years or so, they have made improvements. They are doing more weighting in the polling methodology to try to capture some of the people who aren't participating. I think they've improved things, but they still have a problem. Sometimes it's a problem where they're underestimating the Trump vote. Sometimes it's a problem where they're either overestimating it or overestimating the Republican vote, as they did in 2022. So this is not science. It's art. It's art. And even great artists make mistakes. They color out of the lines. So I just caution people, let's not make the mistakes we made in 2016 and 2020 and 2018 and 2022.
So from that perspective, let's say you're the Harris campaign, and the poll I read, it's obviously very tight. The math wasn't on her side there, so I would be breathing a sigh of relief if I were them. But what states are you focusing on? Are you going to the Sun Belt? Are you shoring up the blue wall? What does that look like to make sure that on Election Day, the math is on your side?
Well, clearly the 7 swing states are the ones we're watching. And I always look at some others to make sure they're not slipping into the competitive column. They could. There's no law that says other states can't come into it, but it doesn't look that way. We're watching whatever polls are taken, sometimes infrequent, in other states that either have been competitive or have the demographics potentially to be competitive. But so far, at least, as of mid-October, it seems as though we have the same 7 states, the blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, as well as the southern tier of North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada. And those are the 7 we concentrate on. And we don't just rely on polling. I've been at this a long time and have a long list of reliable people in and around politics, both parties and no party. And I check with them because often people have a good sense of what is happening there in their states, the states they've studied, the votes they've studied. I rely on them less when they're guessing about other states. They don't know any more about it than I do. But you go to all kinds of sources. You don't stick to just public polling.
I am curious, when you're trying to reach those voters in those 7 states that are so crucial to this election, we're seeing a media blitz from both candidates, and they're going on less traditional media outlets such as podcasts. Do you think that's the right strategy to reaching these voters, and how effective do you think it's going to be in these swing states?
Well, I'm going to say something radical. I think most of the free media is wasted. Most of the paid media is wasted. The resources of a campaign, both volunteer and financial, should be devoted to identifying voters who are for you and getting them out to vote. GOTV, traditional get out the vote activities and voter contact. Abraham Lincoln said it best in 1860. Find them and vote them. Find them and vote them. Politics in that sense has never changed. So people overestimate the impact of any endorsement by anybody or any media show they're on, no matter when they air the media show. There are so few undecideds, real undecideds, not people who say they're undecided in polls. They're trying to avoid an argument. Many people are speaking over the telephone around friends and family, and they don't want them to know for whom they're voting. This is a volatile time. Makes perfect sense to me that a lot of people, for business reasons, for personal reasons, for family reasons, may want to keep their preferences to themselves. So you can see the picture that I'm painting. That is a picture of uncertainty and a picture that must be broad-based. You can't just look at the paid media. You can't just look at the unpaid free media, that is TV shows, news shows, and the like. You can't just look at polling, both public and private. Sometimes the private polls are more accurate than the publicly available polls, because after all, those publicly available polls are paid for by the pollster and maybe individual sponsors that are not partisan, whereas the private polls can be large sample polls, so they could get more accurate readings of certain subgroups. And they're designed to guide a campaign in the final days or weeks of a campaign. So you have to take a broad view. If you don't, you're going to be misled.
You're painting a big picture here, one that is uncertain as we're a month out from Election Day. But what are you looking at between now and then on Election night? What are you having your eyes on?
On Election night, I have a rule. And the times that I paid attention to it, I've been rewarded. And the times that I've gotten caught up in the excitement of anchors on TV or something else, or partisans who are calling or emailing, I've regretted it. And that is, take the early votes with a grain of salt. You don't really know where they're all coming from. You don't really know the specific practices, not only in each state, but also in the various localities in that state. They have some flexibility. So, are you getting early votes, people who voted well in advance of the election? Are you getting election day voting? Are you getting a combination? And from which localities are you securing those votes? So you just need to chill out. You just need to watch everything, take note of everything, but not get overly excited about anything.
And when do you think that picture will come clearer? Because as we know, in 2016, it materialized overnight. In 2020, it took days, I believe it was Saturday, until Saturday for the election to be called. When do you think we'll get that clear picture?
The only honest answer is I don't know. I'll be shocked personally if it's decided on election night, but I'm kind of old and I remember being shocked a lot. It doesn't make sense that it would be completely over on election night because there are going to be challenges and there are going to be very close states and localities. But there may be enough information so that we can at least tentatively call the race by, 3 a.m. or whenever it turns out to be. But I think there's an equal chance that it will go on for days. And if the courts get involved, goodness knows when we'll have a result. There are nightmare scenarios. I don't care to go through them because I hope they don't happen.
Well, I certainly hope they don't happen either. But before I let you go, I am curious, could you leave our viewers with this? Between Trump and Harris, what is the must-win state for each of them?
Well, of course, there is no one must-win state because there are a combination of states that can make up for a surprise loss in, state X or state Y. But I would say disproportionately for the Democrats, they do have to carry the blue wall. I suppose they could lose one of them. That is Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. But that means they would have to carry states in the South or the West where they're at best at 50-50, maybe a little below 50-50, except for Nevada. So that's the way it is on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, winning Pennsylvania for Trump would put Democrats behind the eight ball. As I've just suggested, they can move the eight ball if they manage to carry certain key states that may not be leaning in their direction. But it really increases the pressure on them. Beyond Pennsylvania, I'd say Trump will be in trouble on election night if we see him losing North Carolina or Georgia.
Dr. Larry Sabato, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate your insights, and I hope you come back again soon.
Well, thank you so much. Enjoyed speaking with you.